I never thought a small piece of electrical equipment on my property could become an HOA battlefield, but that transformer was about to put an entire neighborhood in the dark. Margaret Whitmore, the HOA president, showed up demanding that the transformer be removed. She claimed it was an eyesore and said the HOA had already made its decision. She kept repeating that the equipment didn't belong in a carefully planned community. I asked one simple question: who authorized you to remove it? That night, I went through every document I had. The transformer wasn't just sitting there randomly. It was part of the electrical system serving the surrounding properties. The utility map showed something the HOA apparently hadn't considered. That transformer fed a section of the neighborhood beyond my property. At the next HOA meeting, Margaret announced that the transformer would be removed. Several homeowners applauded before anyone had even asked what the equipment powered. I raised my hand and asked whether the utility company had approved the change. The room went unusually quiet. Margaret brushed the question aside and said the HOA had professionals handling everything, but she couldn't name the utility engineer supposedly overseeing the project. 2 mornings later, a utility crew arrived. I watched from my property as they prepared to disconnect the equipment. The transformer was disconnected and removed from its concrete base. Margaret looked satisfied, as if she had just solved a neighborhood problem. That evening, the first reports started coming in. Lights across the neighborhood began disappearing one house at a time. By the time the outage spread, nearly 200 homes were affected. The HOA office phone started ringing nonstop. Margaret's confidence disappeared when the outage numbers reached her desk. Suddenly, the transformer wasn't an eyesore anymore. Then my phone rang. It was a utility company asking me what I knew about the transformer and its previous location. The next morning, engineer Robert Hayes arrived to inspect the site. He studied the empty pad for several seconds without saying a word. Finally, Robert looked at me and asked, "Where did the transformer go?" I told him exactly what had happened. Robert pulled up the electrical system records and compared them with the physical connections. His expression became more serious with every second. The answer was finally clear. That transformer was a critical part of the distribution network, serving hundreds of homes. Margaret arrived and immediately tried to explain the HOA's decision. Robert listened quietly before asking one question: "Who approved this change?" For the first time, Margaret didn't have an immediate answer. The engineer wasn't asking about HOA aesthetics. He was asking about electrical authorization. Utility crews began tracing the outage through the neighborhood. Every test pointed back toward the same missing piece. The homeowners wanted answers. They weren't interested in landscaping rules anymore. They wanted to know why their homes had lost power. Robert explained that removing critical electrical infrastructure without proper system planning could interrupt service across an entire distribution area. The room finally understood how serious the mistake had been. Margaret stared at the floor as the consequences became impossible to ignore. A decision made for appearance had affected hundreds of families. The utility company began the restoration process. This time, every connection was inspected and documented before power was brought back. One street came back online, then another. Soon, the neighborhood that had been completely dark was glowing again. Robert told me the system was stable again. Then he added, "The important thing is that this gets handled correctly from now on." The next HOA meeting was nothing like the first one. This time, everyone wanted documentation before making another major decision. I never wanted a fight with the HOA. I just wanted them to understand that some things are more important than how they look. 200 homes had gone dark because one decision was made without understanding the system behind it. Sometimes the smallest piece of infrastructure can keep an entire neighborhood running. Like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from.